A recent auction for a collection of hundreds of documents from the 18th and 19th centuries belonging to a single family sold on Yahoo Auction for 73,000 yen, about $660. Some texts from early modern Japan even end up in the trash. After the earthquake, tsunami, and Fukushima nuclear disaster on March 11, 2011, local historians scrambled to photograph historical documents found in dilapidated storehouses slated for destruction and rebuilding. There were so many documents that local museums and universities did not have room to keep those deemed unimportant, and hence they risked being thrown out. Documents from before the 17th century are occasionally discovered, but in ever fewer numbers, and they are treated with greater care. A final word about conventions. In Japanese, the surname precedes the given name. I use the term warrior for the 9th through 16th centuries and samurai for the 17th through 19th centuries, when they existed as a narrowly defined social status group. Warlord and lord both refer to daimyo, military leaders who held territory and engaged in warfare during the 15th and 16th centuries, but by the early 17th century they had become decidedly unwarlike governors. In other words, I split warrior history into two imperfect halves, the medieval and early modern periods, with the early 17th century as the dividing line. That is when the category of warrior narrowed, fundamentally changing for this group their culture and relationship to the rest of the Japanese population. Chapter 1. Becoming Those Who Served. Colloquially, even in Japan, the term samurai is used as a synonym for warrior, but this is incorrect. Samurai originally had a very narrow meaning, referring to anyone who served a noble, even in a non-military capacity. Gradually, it became a title for military servants of warrior families. In fact, a warrior of elite stature in pre-17th century Japan would have been insulted to be called a samurai. There were other more common terms for warriors in classical and medieval Japan that reflected their various duties to the state, nobility, and other superiors. Most specialists in Japan and in the West used the generic term bushi, which means warrior. Warrior is a usefully ambiguous term for referring to a broad group of people before the 17th century with some military function. This includes anyone expected to provide military service to the state when needed, and who received official recognition from a ruling authority to do so, such as the nobility and court in Kyoto or religious institutions. Even the term warrior is imprecise because it incorrectly suggests that warfare was this group's sole occupation. Depending on the time period and status, warriors alternatively governed, traded, farmed, painted, wrote, tutored, and engaged in shady activities. Another caution when using the term warrior is the moral value that modern people attach to the concept. The U.S. military uses warrior in its various training programs, such as Warrior Mind Training, a meditation program created for soldiers to help them cope with post-traumatic stress disorder and to prepare them for the rigors of combat. The developer used the image of the samurai to sell the program, rooting it in the ancient samurai code of self-discipline. No such code existed. Even phrases used ironically assume the existence of an authentic, admirable warrior image, for example, weekend warrior, suggesting that one is a normal, boring person during the week, but becomes some other, more primal person on the weekend. In this usage, a warrior is something one is, not an occupation one does. But throughout Japanese history, people often despised warriors. Artists and writers portrayed warriors as beasts, no better than dogs, uncouth and murderous. Warriors pillaged, looted, and sometimes murdered their way through villages. They found no love among peasants, who feared warriors because peasants suffered the most from their looting, pillaging, and collateral damage. Ironically, it was only during an